Hey guys, today we'll be taking a look at the 538 forecast for the 2022 Senate elections that was just released a couple of days ago. We have already taken a look at the gubernatorial forecast, but in this video we will be focusing specifically on the Senate map for this November. And so looking at the forecast based on polls alone, the Democratic Party has a 57% chance at holding on to their Senate majority. This is because the weaknesses of the GOP candidates when matched up against the Democratic incumbents is really starting to show. The GOP has not been smart about who they've been nominating, and that has resulted in the Democrats being much more favored to win against the Republicans if you only look at the data that has come out. However, if you do take into account fundraising as well as past voting patterns, you will see that the Democratic Party now only has a 45% chance of winning. So in this video, we will be using the deluxe version of this forecast, which also uses experts' own ratings. So those are going to be a bit more subjective, and mainly the experts' ratings is basically going to help the GOP here because Joe Biden's presidency is not doing too well at this point, and Democrats historically do turn out less in midterm elections. So based on the deluxe model, it is a coin flip. However, the GOP does have a very slight advantage. 55-45 in terms of odds is nothing. This race really could go to both sides. And looking at the map here, it is a very even map, very similar to the map that I currently have for the Senate. With the solid states filled in, it is 44-44. I'm going to be filling in the 538 map over here because it is much easier to look at here. With the solid states filled in, these are states in which either party has a 95% or higher chance of winning, and with those states filled in, it is 44-44. So these elections are going to be very even in terms of how competitive they are going to be. And so looking at the potential outcomes for the Senate elections, currently the most likely outcome is that the GOP wins 51 seats. The Democrats, they only need to win 50 seats to hold on to control. So having Kamala Harris as the vice president really is helping the Democratic Party a lot at this point, because if they had to win 51 seats, it would be a lot more difficult for the Democrats to actually win Senate control. So right now, the GOP is still slightly favored. The most likely outcome is still one in which the GOP wins. However, there's still a long range of outcomes where the Democratic Party actually ends up retaining control. And so right now, the Republicans have an 80% chance of holding between 47 and 54 seats. This obviously really does not tell us too much about the race, and the average number of seats according to 538's 40,000 simulations is currently 50.8 for the GOP. And looking at how the chances of controlling the Senate for both parties have changed, you will see that currently the GOP's numbers have been pretty low compared to where they were just a month ago. Just a month ago in early June, the GOP had a 60% chance at controlling the Senate. It was 60-40. Now it is a lot more of a coin flip. If you look at the average number of seats controlled by party, it's always been 51-49. However, the surprising thing is that if you actually look at this map, the Democratic Party will actually hold on to Senate control. I'll go over each of the individual toss-up races in just a moment here. And so at the bottom of this page, you'll be able to see who is ahead in every single state. And so looking at the 2022 map, I'm going to start off by looking at the states in which 530 classifies them as being likely for each party, starting off with the state of Florida. This is the most solid states in the entire group of likely states for the 2022 Senate elections. Marco Rubio is running for a third term after a strong victory in 2016. This November, he is going to face Val Demings, and according to this forecast here, Marco Rubio has a 94% chance at winning his third term in office. Val Demings really does not stand a chance, even though Florida was the closest Senate race in 2018, with Rick Scott only winning by a 1/10 of a percentage point. 2022 is going to be very different. Val Demings is going to get absolutely destroyed. Currently, 538 forecasts Demings winning just 42% of the vote. That is 12% lower than the 54.7% they currently project to go to Marco Rubio. And all the polls that have been released do support the fact that Marco Rubio is in a very good position going into his re-election. Now, moving on to the state of Missouri, another big race here for the GOP. In 2016, Roy Blunt won his re-election against Jason Kander. It was a surprisingly close race. However, Jason Kander did end up losing, and so that did make it, though, so that Roy Blunt did retire because of just how close this race was. In 2022, the primaries on both sides have been an absolute mess. However, FiveThirtyEight currently does expect Eric Greitens and Lucas Kunce to come out as their respective parties' nominees. Eric Greitens is, of course, the former governor of Missouri that resigned as a result of a sexual scandal, and he is the worst possible nominee that the GOP could put up, but it would go with the Republicans' theme of putting up some pretty terrible nominees. I'll go over the other bad nominees that they have endorsed in a couple of moments here, but Eric Greitens has a 94% chance of winning, even though he's a terrible nominee. This is still the state of Missouri, a state that Donald Trump won by a solid margin in both 2016 and 2020. Currently, the margin is expected to be around 14% in favor of the GOP, and Eric Greitens, though his polling numbers do not suggest this, he only leads by around 5% against Lucas Kunce, but the polling is going to be a little bit off. The race is still very early, and the nomination process has not even ended for both parties. So in the state of Missouri currently, it is also going to be likely for the Republican Party. And moving on to the state of Washington, this is a state that the Democratic Party has to win, and they pretty much are guaranteed to win here, just like the GOP is guaranteed to win in Florida and Missouri. In the state of Washington, Patty Murray is running for her 5th term in office. She was first elected in 1992, and in 2016, she had a very strong margin of victory. However, in this election cycle, things are going to be a little bit closer. She still does have a 91% chance of winning against Stiffly Smiley, but if you look at the latest polls that have been released, Patty Murray has not led by a solid margin, and this is still the state of Washington, a state that she is very much favored in. So the longtime incumbent, Patty Murray, is facing one of the closest races that she has seen over the last couple of decades, and so that is why right now, the state of Washington, even though it is solidly blue, is going to most likely be a likely state in this year's Senate elections. In the state of Ohio, another likely state in favor of the GOP, this time with J.D. Vance against Tim Ryan. The FiveThirtyEight forecast currently gives J.D. Vance a 89% chance of winning against Tim Ryan. Tim Ryan is a very good nominee on the Democratic side. I mean, if you do look at the polls, the polling is relatively close between the two. Tim Ryan actually led in 2 of the polls released in just the last couple of months, although this latest Suffolk poll shows J.D. Vance up by 2%. And so currently, they do believe that this race in Ohio is going to be decided by a 10% margin. I personally disagree. I think this race can get a little bit closer. I do not believe J.D. Vance is going to do that much better than Donald Trump. Donald Trump only won the state of Ohio by 8% in both of his elections, and I don't think J.D. Vance is going to do better. I think Tim Ryan will outperform Joe Biden. So as of right now, I would give Tim Ryan a bit of a better chance at winning this race, but according to this forecast, it is still likely for the GOP, although I do agree that the Republican Party is basically almost guaranteed to win the race at this point, even if it does get a little bit closer. And in the state of Colorado, Michael Bennet is also running for his 3rd term. We have a lot of 3rd-term incumbents running this cycle that were first elected in 2010. But Michael Bennet, re-elected in 2016 against Daryl Glenn by a margin of 7% in these midterm elections. He will face Joe O'Dea. Joe O'Dea just recently won the Republican primary just last week. Looking at the results, it was not that strong of a victory. He only won by 10% in a state primary, and so that is not a significant margin at all. And so he will have to try to regain support of the Republican base before he tries to challenge Michael Bennet too seriously. I think that Michael Bennet is pretty much going to cruise to victory at this point. 86% chance that Bennet wins his 3rd term. He is the incumbent, and currently he is expected to win by a margin of around 9%. The only poll released shows Michael Bennet up 13%. So I definitely agree with FiveThirtyEight here. The state of Colorado is most definitely a likely state currently for the Democratic Party. We have a couple more likely states on this map. I believe actually just one more, and that being the state of North Carolina, where the Republican Party has a 77% chance of winning. In the state of North Carolina, Ted Budd versus Sherry Beasley. None of them are the incumbent. Richard Burr will be retiring and not seek re-election this November, but Ted Budd is a good candidate. He is someone that can win. Sherry Beasley is a strong candidate as well. However, this is still North Carolina, a state that the Democratic Party could not flip on the Senate or presidential level in 2020, and in 2022, the national environment is not any more favorable for the Democratic Party. So that is why it is going to be harder for the Democrats to win this time than it was last time, and they were not even able to succeed in 2020. If you look at the Senate election between Cal Cunningham and Tom Tillis, Cal Cunningham was 1.7% away. He actually did worse than Joe Biden in the state of North Carolina. He was by all accounts expected to defeat Tom Tillis. Cal Cunningham did have a sexting scandal that really did cause him the campaign. I think if that did not happen, definitely Cal Cunningham would have won. It would have been a very close margin, but Cal Cunningham would have been the Democrats' 51st senator if he did not have that scandal very late in the race. So he basically is not going to ever be nominated by the Democratic Party for anything again, just because of how much he cost them. If Cal Cunningham won that race, the Democratic Party would be in such a better position right now. And so in the state of North Carolina, currently Ted Budd, 77% chance of victory. If you look at this forecast, though, his odds have dropped a little bit over the last couple of weeks. The popular vote is going to be around a 5% margin in favor of Ted Budd. The latest polls do show that Ted Budd has a clear advantage. However, this one poll from Survey USA from early last month does show Sherry Beasley up 4 points, but overall, Sherry Beasley is still lacking in terms of her support in the race in North Carolina. So with the likely states filled in, 48 races for the GOP, 46 for the Democrats, now you have the 6 toss-up races. These 6 races in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and New Hampshire are really the races that could actually go both ways. Both parties have a significant chance of winning. If it's 85-15 in these likely states, I mean, really, we all know it's going to go one way. But in these 6 toss-up races, both parties genuinely have a good chance at winning these races. So I'm going to start off by taking a look at the race in the state of Wisconsin, where Ron Johnson is going to be running for a 3rd term. So again, another 3rd term incumbent. So in the state of Wisconsin, it is a pretty close race right now for Ron Johnson. He is not very popular in his state. He is pretty disapproved of. He's actually less popular than Tony Evers, the Democratic governor, but Ron Johnson still has a 72% chance of winning. He is favored to win his race. He is still the incumbent, and against Mandela Barnes. Barnes is the current lieutenant governor under Tony Evers. He only has a 28% chance of winning, and this is expecting the fact that Mandela Barnes is even going to win his nomination. He actually is still in a very tough primary against Alex Lasry. Currently, it is actually unclear as to who is going to end up being the Democratic nominee in the state of Wisconsin. The latest polls show Mandela Barnes just 4 points ahead of Alex Lasry, so we're just going to have to see what happens there in the state of Wisconsin. But currently, it is looking good for the Democrats with the overall trend, but still, in terms of actually winning this race, the GOP clearly has the advantage, and currently, Ron Johnson is expected to win by a margin of 4.6%. In the previous election, it was around the same margin. I think that Ron Johnson is a candidate that can win in the midterm elections this November, but still, it will be very difficult for him just given his unpopularity as well as everything that's coming out about him and in the January 6th committee hearings with him trying to overthrow the election results that elected Joe Biden. And of course, Wisconsin is a state that voted for the current president. So Wisconsin currently is going to be the first lean state on the map in favor of the GOP. Now, moving on to the next state on the map, the state of New Hampshire. This is going to be the second lean state that FiveThirtyEight has, and they currently give Maggie Hassan a 69% chance at winning her re-election, 31% for Donald Boldeau. Who wins the Republican nomination currently is still unclear, whether it's Donald Boldeau or it will be Chuck Morse, but right now, the Democratic Party has the clear advantage. I do think, though, that if Chuck Morse wins the nomination, he will do better against Maggie Hassan than Donald Boldeau, but looking at all of the polls between Boldeau and Hassan, Maggie Hassan is led by pretty significant margins in every single poll that has been released, so her 70% chance of winning is very reasonable. In the state of New Hampshire, she was able to defeat Republican incumbent Kelly Ayotte in 2016. This was the closest race in the 2016 Senate cycle, and this year I think that it will be different. She is now the incumbent. It will be a lot easier for her to win when she is not trying to defeat a sitting senator. So in the state of New Hampshire, currently Maggie Hassan is projected to win her race by around 4%, and so that is why I have the state of New Hampshire as lean for the Democratic Party. Now we have just 4 more races, starting off with the race in the state of Arizona, with Mark Kelly running for his first full term in office. Mark Kelly is one of the best incumbents that the Democrats have this cycle, and he now has a 57% chance of winning. He was at one point one of the most vulnerable Democratic incumbents, but Mark Kelly is a strong candidate. It's just the fact that the state of Arizona had been a Republican stronghold for such a long time. I mean, if you look at the election results, just go back a couple of years. In 2016, John McCain won Arizona in his re-election by 13%. Now, granted, John McCain is very popular in his state, so he was able to defeat Ann Kirkpatrick by almost a solid margin. In 2012, you saw Jeff Flake winning by a very solid margin, and of course, Jeff Flake was replaced by Kyrsten Sinema in 2018. So the state of Arizona has gone a lot more blue over the last couple of years, but at its core, it is still a race that the GOP has a slight advantage just simply going into it. Doug Ducey won his re-election as governor by a solid margin in 2018. So this state is by no means a blue state. It is still a very purple state, and this year, 2022, is a year in which the Democratic Party really is not very popular. And so, as of right now, looking at how this forecast has changed, Mark Kelly's odds have actually gone down a little bit over the last couple of weeks. I think that Blake Masters is a good nominee on the Republican side. He is one of the more moderate ones, and I think that he does have actually a good shot at winning. But currently, Mark Kelly is projected to win his race by a margin of 1.2%. Even though the polling between the two candidates shows that Mark Kelly is ahead significantly, this is likely due to the fact that the GOP primary is still a big mess in the state of Arizona. We're really just going to have to see what happens on the Republican side in the next couple of weeks here, as the primary is going to be held on the 9th of August. So the state of Arizona currently is going to be lean for the Democrats. Now we're going to move on to the tilt states, starting off with the state of Georgia. I'm going to say right now, the state of Georgia is going to go to the GOP according to the 538 forecast. Looking at the state of Georgia, currently Herschel Walker has actually a 55% chance of winning. I personally disagree. I do think that Raphael Warnock is actually favored in this race. I mean, just look at the polling numbers. Every single recent poll shows Warnock ahead. This poll showing them even was funded by Herschel Walker's own campaign. Even his own campaign poll could not even show him in the lead. So right now, Herschel Walker is expected to win by a margin of just 0.2%. So still, it is going to be a very, very close race. But I do think that Raphael Warnock should be a little bit ahead. Of course, there is the possibility that he wins in a runoff again. But personally, I think that as of this point in time, Raphael Warnock does have a slight advantage in the Georgia race. Herschel Walker just is not a good candidate, even though Georgia is a race that even though Georgia is a state that the GOP has had a very long history in. I do understand that's probably why 538 gave it to Herschel Walker right now. We're really just going to have to see. This race has basically been decided for a long time who the candidates were going to be, and over these last couple of months, Herschel Walker's odds have been slipping more and more. And so now we have the two final states on this map, the states of Nevada and Pennsylvania. Starting off with the state of Pennsylvania, where currently John Fetterman has a 51% chance of defeating Mehmet Oz, and currently he is projected to win by a margin of 0.3%. The polling numbers, very good for Fetterman, and this race, Mehmet Oz is a terrible candidate on the GOP side. He does not live in the state. He basically has no connection to the state. He only ran in it because there was a very competitive primary, and Pat Toomey was retiring as the GOP incumbent. So John Fetterman, the incumbent lieutenant governor, is in a strong position in Pennsylvania, and I think that this forecast really just goes to show you that the Democratic Party actually does have a good chance at flipping Pennsylvania, despite how poorly they're really doing nationwide with the presidency of Joe Biden, as well as just their generic congressional ballot numbers. And finally, in the state of Nevada, this race will also go to the Democratic Party, although this is really a technicality at this point in the state of Nevada. Currently, both Catherine Cortez Masto and Adam Laxalt have a 50% chance at winning this race, and they're forecast to win 48.1 and 48% of the votes respectively. So this is going to be a very close race in Nevada. The polling has just been all over the place between Cortez Masto and Laxalt, but Adam Laxalt's recent comments on abortion are not going to be popular. He is very much pro-life. He supports the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and Nevada is also the most pro-abortion state in the country. So right now, the state of Nevada is tilt for the Democrats. So according to the updated 538 forecast for the U.S. Senate, Currently, the Republicans have a 55% chance at winning, 45 for the Democrats, but if you look at the map here, it is 50-50, which signifies Democratic control. So basically, the point here is that we are 4 months away from the election, and it is going to be very, very close.